Hey YouTube people, it's been an exciting week for Prusa. At Formnext, they announced the collaboration with Bondtech for the INDX system to have tool changing heads in the Core 1 and the Core 1L. So that's really exciting. I actually am on the list for the Founders Edition on that, so get subscribed up as I'll be covering that in future videos. But for this video today, Prusa also announced the Core 1 Plus, which is not really a print quality improvement at all, but it is a quality of life upgrade to the machine in 3 different ways. First, it automatically will adjust the vents on the top of the machine. Secondly, the spool pass-through will have a switch that lets you get filament through it a little bit easier if you're using TPU, but I imagine it might be easy to, sometimes filament just doesn't want to get through there sometimes. It would be nice to have like a release and then you can relock it. I'm imagining that's the place, but we're going to test it here in a second. And also the spool holder itself. Now, the stock spool holder is not very good at all. I do not like it. I actually replaced it on this machine with kind of a low friction setup with bearings, but that's actually not great either because it's so low friction that the spool sometimes kind of unwinds itself. So I'm going to be moving it to Prusa's solution here, and the biggest part about that I like about this design is that it's a 2-piece, and you have this kind of modular adapter that you can leave on the side of the machine. So if you do change out spools, it's as easy as changing out the spool connection piece without having to unscrew this thing, because I've unscrewed this thing a lot on my Core 1, and it's not fun. There's a lot of threads. It's actually pretty tight tolerances. So hopefully this is the last time I have to replace this. But let's go ahead and look at all the pieces and parts that you need to complete this mod, because the best thing about it is Prusa has made it available for the community. You can upgrade a Core 1 to a Core 1 Plus without purchasing their kit, although you won't get the little sticker that goes here. So that may be a bad thing there if you really want to have the little plus there. But let's take a look and see how well this goes together and how well the functions work. So we're going to go through everything you want to know about this Core 1 Plus upgrade. But first, let's look at the parts. Okay, so here's the Core 1 to Core 1 Plus upgrade community version. You can make note of the URL there. The link will be in the description. I will be using a few remixes just because of a few reasons. One you may want to do yourself, even with the stock one. I didn't have an O-ring. There's a very particular size O-ring that you need. But you can print this out of TPU, which I did, and that's what we'll be using. The other thing I did that you may or may not want to do is this one right here. This has a 10 millimeter extended lever. I did that because I'm using the top cover, magnetic top cover mod. If you have a stock one, you don't need this piece. You'd want to use the regular piece here. But because I have that taller magnetic piece, I need that 10 millimeter clearance. So that's the only modification I'm doing from the regular community version. Okay, let's go through the individual pieces. This right here is the puck, is what they call it. And this will attach to the side of the Core 1. This piece right here is the static spool holder. And this is a remix piece that I printed in TPU. And you can buy a gasket, a rubber gasket for this, but I think the TPU is going to work just fine. So that will go over the edge here, and it will... I used a 95A TPU because that's what I have. Going a little softer would be better. Or this was a 2 perimeter. I should have done a 1 perimeter that would give it a little bit more squish. But in testing the friction fit, it works quite well. So I think printing that in TPU, I'm pretty satisfied with doing that in TPU. It feels really solid and secure. So just one other note of what I did. You don't have to do this. They Prusa recommended you print this in PETG. I actually printed it in ASA because I wanted it to be just a slight bit more durable, because you know it's holding a spool which can be heavy at times, might hold a dry box in the future. So I went ASA just because I think it will be just slightly better. So that is the spool holder. Here are the vent pieces. This is the print head cover right lever. And this one is the vent block R1B, modified 10 millimeters because I have that top cover mod. Lastly, we have the filament sensor pieces. I printed these in PETG. We have the sensor cover R1. We have the sensor body, the sensor lever, and printed in orange, we have the sensor switch. And the reason we print this in orange is because we want it to be visible for when we toggle it on the inside of the Core 1, just so it's easier to see and remember where it is. So you'll also want to note that Prusa has great documentation, as always, that will tell you exactly what you need and how to install this in the first place. I will be using this for reference, but also I may differentiate from what they do here just because I've taken the machine apart a couple times, and you know, I have little different setup. I have some mods that may facilitate doing it a little bit differently, but you'll definitely be along for the ride either way. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do before you turn your machine off is lower the bed all the way to the bottom. That way it's out of the way. Prusa's instructions have you pull the whole side panel off with the pins, but I find that's not actually necessary. Just be careful. And that's the way I'm going to be doing it. So I'm going to go from bottom to top to get these upgrades installed, starting with the spool holder. All right, so if you have your heat bed all the way to the bottom, it's really easy to get in here to remove these screws without taking the side panel off. So let's go ahead and do that. You're using the Torx screw head that comes with your machine, and it can take a little bit of elbow grease to get these screws out. And what you don't want to do is drop your screwdriver onto the heat bed. It's probably worth putting a piece of cloth over it to not scratch it. There we go. So let's take a look at that side. So what you want to do is just make sure those screw holes line up like this. When you screw it back on, you want these holes to be vertical. So I find it's easiest to get one started just a little bit, and then that will help you line up the other screw. And of course you want to give it pressure on one side, and because I did mine in ASA, it's actually quite a bit harder to turn. PETG should be a lot easier. So there we go, and we can now take our outer piece and twist it on like that. Hopefully that's a lot better solution in the long run. Okay, so let's see how well this works. Got a Prusa filament. There we go. It also, I think, comes on and off like that. Easy enough. Okay, so let's get to adjusting this piece here. One of the things that confused me a lot about this side piece, taking it on and off when I first started messing with it, was my gut instinct was to go straight up and down with the screwdriver to unscrew these things. The reality of the situation is you have an inclined plane. It's at an angle here. So you actually have to go at it with your screwdriver at an angle. And that makes it, like I just couldn't figure out why my screwdriver wasn't working, but you have to go at it from this angle. And I know I'm probably just not as smart as most people, but when you go in at this angle, your screw comes right out. Okay, so as we get started on this piece, couple things. A, you don't want to torque the PTFE tubing, just be very careful. Prusa recommends you pull this entire thing out. I'm going to show you how to do it without doing that. Also, there are 2 magnets and a steel ball inside this that you do not want to lose those pieces. There's also a collet adapter in here. So you want to be very careful with all of this. So we'll use the standard Allen key, and we'll use a 1.5 millimeter Allen key as we do this. So I'm just going to pull this to the side. So once you take this screw and this screw out, this cover will come off because this is a tensioning screw. So got that, and now I'll actually remove this. And when you do, the lever can come out, and so can the steel ball and everything else, so you want to be careful. And in fact, what I may do before that is remove the sensor and the PTFE tubing. So this is a smaller screw. And now that lever magnet just popped out, so be careful with that. Got our lever. And that steel ball is free once the lever is out. So I'll collect my steel ball. And your sensor will now come out. Just be very gentle with that. There we go. You can push the collet adapter in and pull the PTFE tubing off. And now we can work on this piece somewhere else for a minute. Okay, so on the old part, we have a couple of things to get out of here. We have the nuts on the ends, we have the collet adapter, and the magnet that may be stuck in there. So let me show you how to harvest those. The collet adapter is pretty easy. It's just a matter of getting your fingernails under and popping it off, which that flew across the room, but easy enough with that one. These nuts on the side, I find it's easiest to cut the old part. You're not going to be using it. So if you cut the part where it goes through, that just gives you a little more room to extract. And then if you use a thin Allen wrench, you can push it up as far as you can using the middle, and then if you can get the edge, and once you do that, you can get your nut out like that. So if you have spares, it's actually worth it to not even bother doing this. But if you're in a bind and you don't have any nuts available to you, that's the kind of the easiest way to get them out. And the magnet itself may be just in there really tightly. You may have to dig that out. And there you go. Okay, so we have our new part, and we have our nuts here. Let's go ahead and put those in first. Make sure those are lined up because that's what you'll be screwing into from the outside later. We can also take the collet adapter and put it in the end here. Easy enough. Now you're going to take your steel ball and you're going to drop it into that slot there. We're going to take our lever and we're going to place one of the magnets into this lever button here. And that is going to go into this slot like that. And what you want to do is you want to find the side of the magnet that is going to push away, but we'll insert the lever like this and we'll start tightening. And with this lever piece, you want it to be very loose but tight at the same time. Like, I like getting it to a point where you can sense that it's not moving back and forth. So right now that's stuck. And then I'll back it off a little bit. And there we go. That's perfectly loose, but yet as tight as it can be without being loose. So now you're going to take your second magnet. You're going to put it in here. Actually, you're going to want to... This is slippery, right? So we'll put this in here, and you can see this is the wrong way. This is making the lever attract. You don't want the magnets to attract. You want them to oppose each other. So this way. So now they're pushing away from each other. And again, you want to make sure that they're pushing away from each other when it's all the way in there. Because sometimes you'll think, oh, it's pushing away from it, but if it's not all the way in there, you're passing the pole of the magnet and it's not actually pushing away. So this piece is now ready to get its electronics put back into place and the cover put on so these magnets don't fall away. So be very careful. These magnets will tend to jump. You may want to use a piece of tape if necessary to hold them down. Be right until right before you put the cover on. So yeah, let's go get it installed. All right, so got your filament sensor. Yeah, this can be very tricky. Make sure you keep your thumb over those magnets so they don't jump. But you want to get your wires down, and your end goal on all of this is to have the lever in the IR sensor. Okay, so we have the sensor in place, and when we put the cover on, you don't want to turn the center magnet, because that is the lever, and the lever needs to be able to spin freely. So what you're doing is you're putting just this screw and this screw in. Okay, and now you can put it through the collet adapter, and this is now ready to tuck up back under here and reattach. This part can be tricky to line up, so I like to take my screw like this and get this part through the hole, and then you can reach on the inside of the machine and get then you can kind of feel for the nut on the other side. And again, make sure your screwdriver is angled. And then once you get one of those screws in, the second screw is now way easier. Okay, so now we're going to be attaching this piece right here. And again, this is, I'm using this magnetic cover mod, so yours will look a little bit different, but pretty much the same thing. And all we're doing here is going to remove these two bolts and screw them into this instead. And if you just spin these, they won't actually come unless you hold them with the pliers. Okay, so then we just position this on here. And make sure you're getting a good angle at it. So yeah, you want to tighten it enough that it flows freely, but not so tight that it blocks it. So one thing you need to make sure of with this piece is when this is upside down, there's actually a difference. You can see this dot is basically 3 from the right, like this, and this is 2 and just barely at the 3. So this is like, if you're going from the right, this is right at the end of the 3. Going from the left, this is at the beginning of the third vent. You need to make sure it's this way, which I had it this way, and it does work both ways, but the logic of the firmware needs it to be this way, because when it's this way, it pushes it this way to open. So if it's right here, if it's to the right, it's closed, to the left, it's open. Whereas if it's flipped this way, when it's to the right, it's open, and when it's to the left, it's closed. So let me just make it super clear. So you want to have the vent turned the right way, so when it goes left, it's open, and when it's right, it's closed. All right, so now let's install this piece. It's probably the easiest part. Got our top on. Okay, so now it's time to flash the firmware. If you are using Prusa Connect, you have a really easy option here. All you need to do is go to your printer, and then you're going to go to the dashboard settings, and then click on settings, and then you're going to see your firmware. And then if you hit this little flash button, you need 6.4. You can get on the latest release copy of 6.4. Click transfer, and then if you go back to your printer files, you'll see that the firmware is transferring. And if you don't use Prusa Connect, you can just go download this firmware, put it on the thumb drive, and flash it that way. Really easy to do. Okay, so now that it's downloaded, you can see you've got your Core 1 firmware right here, and we can go ahead and hit flash. After we flash the firmware, you can see we're on 6.4.0 RC2. We're going to go to settings. We're going to go to hardware. And we're going to change the chamber vent control to automatic. And the other thing we're going to do is go to the calibration and tests, and we're going to do the filament sensor calibration again. Okay, so one thing I'm curious about is if I have G-code that I did before this mod, if it's still going to try to change the vent control. So what I'm doing is I have a PLA print here that I'm going to run, and this G-code is old. It's pre this firmware, but I wanted to see if it will detect that it's PLA and open the vent for me. So let's go ahead and tell this to print. Of course, it's going to home itself, and then it goes straight up to the vent. and sets it. So pretty great stuff. By doing the Core Plus upgrade, we get quite a few quality of life features. We get the vents that automatically open and close, you get a TPU pass-through, and you get a spool holder that's modular and can pop off, and it works great. As we saw, you don't even need to re-slice your G-code for this vent open close to work. My understanding is it detects what the G-code says the material is, and if it senses PLA, it will, or whatever material it senses, it will make the right decision. One thing I wish it did have, it'd be kind of cool if you had a setting here to open and close the vent for testing right on the screen, but I don't see that that's there. You can just kind of turn it on or off, and then when you start a print file, it will make its adjustments as needed. But now you don't have to think about it. So pretty cool stuff. If you enjoyed this video, get subscribed up. Thanks for watching. Hope this helped you out, and we'll see you on future videos.